Hey, this is Steve. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about busting bones, crushing them bones, splattering them bones, all with an arrow. That's right, an arrow. Well, this is a crossbow bolt, but bolts, arrows, all that stuff. I hear all this stuff about high FOC, okay? Front of center. You want to have a lot of weight front of center. So we just take, and this is how I do it. I take this weight plate, I tape it to my arrow or my bolt. That way I got that FOC going. No, that's not the way it's done. Okay, we'll talk about how it's really done. The first thing you know is it's not just about putting a heavier broadhead on the front of your arrow or a heavier insert. You see, depending on the spine of your arrow, adding all that weight, say, between the broadhead and the insert, we're going to add, 150 grain broadhead, 100 grain insert, 250 grains, okay? We're going to add an extra 250 grain load to that arrow. Well, what happens if you're underspined? Well, basically, if you've ever seen an arrow shot out of a bow or a crossbow in super slow motion, you'll see that the tail of the arrow is going and it eventually straightens out. Well, if your spine is so light that it never straightens out, you're never going to get the accuracy and you're never going to get the penetration that you're looking for. So that's a big one. So first thing you have to do is determine what you're going to have in the way of an arrow spine. Now, generally, guys are hunting with an arrow with about a 9% FOC. We're talking about close to doubling that, somewhere around 17, 18%. Okay, we're not going super heavy, but we're going a lot heavier than normal. The other thing you need to know about this is it's going to come out of the bow slower. You're not going to get that same scorching speed that you're getting out of a lighter, faster arrow. Now, a lot of people debate, well, do I really need all this, weight forward stuff and, heavy arrows and stuff for whitetail? In a lot of cases, you don't. But in the case that you want that, and we'll say it again, margin for error, if you do encounter bone, especially a shoulder blade, well, something can be said for a heavier arrow. You see, I'm going to say something that might surprise you. That FOC really only means something, especially a heavy FOC, really only means something after the arrow contacts the deer, not before. Now, there is a big rule of thumb, actually two of them, that we're going to look at when a broadhead contacts bone on a deer. Number one, you need an arrow that weighs at least 650 grains. Okay, so if you have a 400 grain arrow and you're shooting 70 pounds, which is, not that much. It's on a heavy side, but not that much. You're going to be taking and using a 100 grain insert and a 150 grain broadhead to achieve that. Easy enough. Now, here's the hard part. When it comes to breaking bones on deer and this whole magical 650 grain weight that guys like Ranch Fairy and Dr. Ed Ashby and stuff talk about, there's another critical thing. That when you do encounter bone, that broadhead has the integrity and shape to make it conducive to breaking bone. Now, if you're shooting a fawn, if you're shooting a small doe, if you're shooting a small buck, chances are if you hit that deer in the shoulder blade, not the bone below it or the knuckle, which is really hard to break, you may very well go through the shoulder blade. Now, if you hit where the extra webbing is, where it gets, where that other bone comes down the center, chances go down. And here's something I want you to know, that when you hit that 650 grain threshold or slightly over it just for safety, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. The likelihood that it's going to happen goes up, that you're going to breach bone. But there's no guarantee. So, you've got the head, it's going to hit the deer, and it needs to keep its integrity. That means the point can't curl over, the blades can't be at such a great angle like that you have no mechanical advantage. As a matter of fact, the best broadhead that they found was called the grizzly stick, and it's shaped more like a traditional spear than our broadheads. You see, the narrower the broadhead is, the more mechanical advantage it has to splitting the bone, because it's not trying to force it all apart at once with a wide broadhead. So you need to consider that. Even like a Magnus Stinger, I would consider that moderate, okay? So that's about as wide a broadhead as I would go to with something like that. So, you're going to have that heavy arrow, 650 grains. You need a broadhead that's got integrity. That's right, you're not going to damage the broadhead. To increase your likelihood of breaking bone by, get this, 30 to 50%. That's over your likelihood of what you already had, whether it's 20, 30, 10, whatever. Okay? That's where you're going to get the max. Let's let that sink down. It's not a guarantee. There's no way of knowing that, yeah, for sure, I'm going to blast right through the bone on that deer. It gives you a better chance, but it's not a guarantee. Now, some people are going to say, yeah, but I'm shooting a single bevel broadhead. Single bevels. Anything going for a single bevel broadhead? Actually, yes. If you've ever taken a single bevel, that's harder to say than I thought, a single bevel broadhead and took a potato and pushed it into the potato, you will see that that broadhead wants to rotate. So as it hits a deer and encounters the bone, not only will it want to go through, but it's going to want to turn, which will add to the, quote, bone crackliness that you get. So yes, that is an advantage, as long as the head maintains its integrity. So to sum it all up, when you're considering building a heavy arrow, remember, the broadhead choice makes a big difference. And also, it's not a guarantee. You increase the likelihood, but it's not a guarantee. Hey, for a real world deer hunter, I'm Steve.